Did you know that most men completely miss the 3 most powerful spots to kiss a woman? Yet these are the very places that can spark her deepest emotional closeness and even awaken her physical desire, especially after 60. Here's the shocking truth. It's not her lips, not her chest, not the places you've always assumed. In fact, for millions of women, those obvious spots don't even work the same way anymore. But the hidden ones, when touched with care, can change everything. I'm Dr. Mohit Khera, a board-certified urologist with over 3 decades of experience helping men restore intimacy, confidence, and vitality. I've worked with thousands of couples who feared their connection had faded with age, and I've seen firsthand how simple, science-backed steps can bring closeness back to life. Here's the paradox most men never realize. As women age, their bodies respond less to urgency and more to gentleness. The secret is that her most responsive zones are not where passion is loudest, but where tenderness whispers. And when you know where to kiss, you'll discover that a single touch can release hormones that calm her body, ease her mind, and open her heart. That's why today I'm going to reveal the 3 overlooked kissing spots that every man over 60 needs to know. These aren't tricks or gimmicks. They are rooted in biology and proven in relationships, capable of reigniting the spark no matter how many years have passed. So stay with me, because I'll walk you through each one, and once you learn them, you'll never look at intimacy the same way again. Before we begin, I'd love for you to subscribe and turn on the bell, so you never miss another message designed especially for men like you. And if this video speaks to you, just type 1 in the comments. If it doesn't, type 0 and tell me how I can serve you better. Now let's begin with the very first spot, one that most men overlook completely. It isn't obvious, but it holds the power to calm her body, quiet her mind, and make her feel safe in your arms. I'm talking about the gentle, nerve-rich nape of her neck. 1. The nape of the neck, where trust meets biology. When I think back to the countless conversations I've had with men in their 60s and 70s, there's a common thread that keeps appearing. Many tell me, "Doctor, I try to do the right things. I try to be close to my wife, but she doesn't respond the way she used to. I don't know what I'm missing." And usually, they're looking at the obvious places, thinking intimacy is only about the lips, the breasts, or the areas we've been conditioned to chase since we were young. What they don't realize is that women's bodies change over time. And after menopause, the places that once worked so quickly may not carry the same spark. But here's the remarkable truth. There are other areas, overlooked and often forgotten, that remain just as powerful, sometimes even more so. And one of the most reliable of these is the nape of the neck. The nape, that soft curve where her hairline meets her shoulders, is far more than just skin. It's a gateway into her nervous system, a place filled with delicate nerve endings that send messages straight into the parts of the brain that regulate trust, memory, and emotion. From a medical perspective, gentle stimulation here shifts her body from a state of alertness and tension into one of safety and receptivity. But from a human perspective, it does something even more important. It tells her, without words, that she is safe in your presence. I've sat across from women in my clinic who describe this in deeply personal terms. One woman told me that when her husband brushed her hair aside and pressed a slow kiss against her neck, she felt her whole body soften. The tension she had been carrying in her shoulders seemed to melt away. She said it wasn't about sex in that moment. It was about knowing she was seen, cherished, and not rushed. Another told me that a kiss on the nape slowed her breathing and made her feel as though she could finally relax after a day filled with responsibilities. Gentlemen, that's the power you hold in something as simple as a well-placed kiss. The key here is patience. You cannot approach the nape with urgency or force. Quick or aggressive movements risk startling her or pushing her further into stress mode. Instead, think of it as an invitation. Take your time. Move her hair gently. Pause. Let her feel your warmth before you even kiss. Then hold your lips there for a moment longer than you think you should. Breathe with her. This is not performance. This is presence. And presence is what she longs for, especially at this stage of life. Biologically, the nape carries another advantage. As estrogen levels fall in menopause, many women experience changes in their pelvic tissues, sometimes dryness, sometimes discomfort. Direct stimulation in those areas can feel abrupt or even unpleasant. The nape, however, remains sensitive regardless of hormonal shifts. That makes it a consistent and reliable pathway into intimacy, even when other areas may require more patience or preparation. By focusing here, you're not only respecting her comfort, you're also building the foundation for deeper closeness. What I love most about this spot is how it communicates trust. In the animal kingdom, exposing the back of the neck is a gesture of vulnerability. For a woman to welcome your kiss there, especially when she's navigating the insecurities and physical changes of aging, is a profound sign of openness. When you respond with gentleness, you reinforce that vulnerability with safety. That exchange, her willingness to open and your choice to honor it, is the essence of intimacy after 60. I encourage you to try this with intention. Don't make it a trick or a tactic. Make it a ritual of tenderness. Let her know through your actions that you value every part of her, not just the obvious ones. When she feels that message in her body, she'll respond not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire to connect with you again. And once that door is open, you'll be ready to explore the next hidden place. A spot that seems even less sensual at first glance, yet carries the power to release her bonding hormones, lower her stress, and draw her closer than you may have thought possible. Let's talk about what lies just behind her ear. 2. Behind the ear, the gateway to bonding hormones. Over the years, I've had countless men come into my office, often frustrated, sometimes even defeated, telling me that no matter what they try, their wives just don't seem to respond the way they once did. And when I ask them where they focus their attention, they almost always point to the usual places. Rarely, if ever, does a man say, "I kissed her gently behind the ear." Yet this overlooked spot, so small and unassuming, is one of the most powerful keys to a woman's intimacy. I've seen this truth in research, and I've heard it in the quiet, vulnerable voices of women who share their stories with me. That small curve just behind her ear carries far more sensitivity than most men realize. The skin is thin, delicate, and filled with nerve endings that link directly into cranial pathways influencing the vagus nerve. Now, I don't expect you to memorize the science, but here's what you need to know. Gentle contact here doesn't just feel nice. It creates a cascade of changes inside her body. It lowers cortisol, the stress hormone that so many women struggle with after menopause. It triggers the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone that deepens trust and emotional connection. And in that moment, her body is no longer bracing against the world. It is leaning toward you. I remember one patient, a woman in her late 50s, who told me through tears that when her husband softly kissed just behind her ear, she felt as though years of tension melted in an instant. She described it as if her heart exhaled, not because the kiss was passionate in the traditional sense, but because it felt safe, tender, and intimate in a way she hadn't known she needed. Gentlemen, that's the power of this forgotten spot. It's not about raw desire, it's about unlocking her trust. And trust, more than anything else, is what opens the door to closeness. The technique here matters just as much as the location. If you rush in, bite, or pull, you risk breaking the spell and startling her nervous system into defense. But when you slow down, when you pause, when you let your lips barely graze her skin, the message is entirely different. It says, "I am here with you. I am patient. I am not in a hurry." Add a whisper of warm breath, maybe even a soft word spoken into her ear, and you have combined the physical with the emotional. In that moment, she doesn't just feel kissed, she feels chosen. This spot also carries a lifetime of emotional history. Think about it. From childhood, the ear has always been the place for secrets, whispers, and private laughter. It's where trust was built in friendships and relationships long before intimacy was even on the horizon. So when you kiss behind her ear now, especially after 60, you're not just stimulating nerve endings. You're tapping into decades of emotional meaning. You're telling her she is still the one who gets your secrets, your whispers, your affection. That sense of being uniquely chosen, valued beyond appearance or age, is what makes this touch so profound. And I will tell you from my years of practice, the results go beyond the bedroom. Women who regularly receive this kind of gentle, intentional contact often experience lower blood pressure, better stress resilience, and even improved sleep. That's how deeply connected our biology and emotions truly are. So when you place a kiss behind her ear, you are not only nurturing intimacy, you are supporting her overall well-being. I urge you to try this, but try it with reverence. Make it a gift, not a demand. Approach her slowly, let your presence be felt before your lips even touch her skin, and then linger in that space where time feels suspended. You may be surprised at how powerfully she responds, not with words, but with the way her body leans into yours, with the way her eyes soften, with the way she begins to breathe a little easier. And once you've awakened that trust, once you've stirred her sense of safety and belonging, there is another place waiting. A place most men dismiss as ordinary, yet it carries extraordinary power. It's small, discreet, and right there in plain sight. But when kissed with care, it can speak to her heart in a way no other touch can. Let's move now to the delicate inner wrist. 3. The inner wrist, a pulse of tenderness. Through the years, I've often told men that intimacy after 60 isn't about doing more, it's about noticing more. And one of the most overlooked places that proves this truth is the inner wrist. I can't count the number of times I've had a patient, usually a man in his 60s or 70s, look at me puzzled when I suggested this spot. They'd say, "Doctor, the wrist? Really?" And then, weeks later, they'd return with a quiet smile, telling me that a single kiss there had sparked a reaction in their wife they never expected. That's when I know they've discovered something deeper than passion. They've found tenderness. The inner wrist is unlike any other part of the body. The skin is thin, almost translucent, and underneath run the vessels that carry the rhythm of life itself. When you kiss her wrist, you are close enough to her pulse to remind her, without words, that she is alive, that she is vital, and that her essence matters to you. This is not just a gesture of affection, it is a recognition of her being. For a woman who has carried decades of responsibility, whose body has changed with age and menopause, and who may sometimes feel unseen, that recognition can feel like oxygen to her spirit. There's a physiological side to this as well. The inner wrist is densely supplied with sensory receptors. Gentle contact here sends calming signals through the median and ulnar nerves, shifting her body out of stress mode and into rest. I've heard women describe how just a light kiss at the wrist slowed their breathing, how their chest felt less tight, how the weight they didn't even know they were carrying seemed lighter for a moment. That's not an illusion, that's her nervous system responding in real time. And as her body calms, her heart opens, making closeness not something to endure, but something to desire. The emotional meaning of this touch is just as powerful. The wrist has always carried symbolic weight. Think of how often doctors and nurses take the pulse there to confirm vitality. Think of how personal it feels when someone gently holds your wrist in their hand. It's not invasive, it's intimate. When you bring your lips to that spot, you're not rushing her. You're not demanding anything of her. You're saying, "I see you, I honor you, I cherish you as you are." And in that moment, she is no longer worried about age, about appearance, about the insecurities that can creep in over the years. She is simply present with you. One man told me he discovered this by accident. His wife was sitting at the kitchen table, tired after a long day. He reached over, took her hand, and kissed her wrist gently. He told me she froze, looked at him with tears in her eyes, and whispered, "I needed that." Not because it was sexual in the usual sense, but because it was tender, unexpected, and deeply human. That single gesture did more for their intimacy than months of trying to plan big moments. Sometimes, it's the smallest touches that carry the greatest weight. I encourage you to make this part of your daily rhythm. It doesn't require dim lights or special timing. You can do it when you're holding hands at the dinner table, when you're sitting together on the couch, or even when you're saying goodnight. What matters is that you do it with intention. Hold her wrist gently, pause, kiss slowly, and let her feel that you mean every bit of it. If you add eye contact, the effect multiplies, because now it's not just her wrist you're touching, it's her soul you're reaching. And here's the beauty. The more often you practice this, the more natural it feels, and the more she comes to associate your presence with safety, love, and warmth. Over time, that trust transforms into desire, and intimacy stops being a performance and becomes a natural expression of the bond you share. But the journey doesn't end here, because once you've unlocked these 3 spots, the nape, behind the ear, and the wrist, you may wonder if there are other places, hidden in plain sight, that carry even deeper meaning. And the truth is, there are. They're riskier, more vulnerable, and if approached with the right care, they can create intimacy so profound it lingers long after the moment has passed. Let's explore them together. 4. Riskier spots where vulnerability meets intimacy. As a urologist, I've spent decades listening to men and women talk about their struggles with closeness after 60. And something I've learned is that real intimacy isn't just about pleasure, it's about courage. There are areas of a woman's body that carry a special kind of sensitivity, not only because of the nerve endings beneath the skin, but because of the emotions, memories, and insecurities that live there. I call these the riskier spots. They can awaken extraordinary closeness when approached with patience, but they can just as easily shut her down if handled without care. That's why they matter so much. One of these places is the hollow of the collarbone. It's such a small dip, but when a woman feels your lips there, it's as if you've touched her heart directly. Many women in midlife have told me they feel overlooked, invisible even. A kiss along the collarbone sends the opposite message. It tells her she is still treasured at the very core of who she is. Another forgotten spot is the inside of the elbow. It might not look like much, but the skin there is tender, almost childlike, and when kissed, it can send shivers down her spine. I once had a woman tell me she hadn't realized how sensitive that area was until her partner touched it, and the surprise alone made her feel alive again. And then there are the stomach and hips. For so many women after menopause, this is where self-consciousness lives. Weight changes, scars, skin that no longer looks the way it once did. Men often avoid these areas, but when you kiss them slowly, without judgment, you are giving her something far greater than arousal. You are giving her acceptance. I've seen the transformation when men dare to explore these riskier places with tenderness. Women describe feeling not just wanted, but healed. They say it erases years of criticism or silence, and for the first time in a long time, they feel free to trust again. But the key is timing. These areas should never be rushed into. Only when trust is built through the gentler spots, the neck, the ear, the wrist, should you step into this territory. When you do, and when you ask for her guidance along the way, these riskier spots become sacred ground. And here's what I want you to carry with you. Intimacy after 60 isn't about knowing every technique. It's about daring to meet your partner where she feels most vulnerable and showing her she is safe, desired, and still deeply loved. Because when you do, you're not only awakening her body, you're restoring her spirit. And that brings us to the heart of this message, the final reminder that ties everything together, and it may change the way you look at intimacy for the rest of your life. As we close, remember this: the nape of the neck, behind the ear, the wrist, even the riskier spots. All of them aren't just about touch, they're about sending a message. You matter. You are safe. You are still desired. After 60, intimacy isn't lost. It deepens. I've seen it countless times in my patients, and I promise you, with presence and patience, this is where true closeness begins.